Welcome to Long Term. I'm Ty King, and this podcast where we've been talking about recovery, right? What's it like for someone that has some sort of substance abuse issues or addiction, or and it's not doesn't you have to be any kind of substance. It can be to something that they're addicted to, that it's part of their daily life, right? There's eating habits, there are sexual habits, there are a lot of different things that people become addicted to. Realizing when it becomes a problem, and then reaching out to the resources that you can find and know that are available. I think one of the problems that we've run into, that we've discovered, along the course of this, is that not a lot of people know about what resources are actually available to them, or think that the resources that are out there are just not a good fit for them, because that's not for me. That's not for people in addiction. That's for people that are just dealing with normal kind of problems, right? But I think that's the Venn diagram of like where we all sort of fit because that first choice to use something or to fall into the addiction of something, it usually goes back to something else in the beginning, some sort of trauma, some sort of experience that you went through. And I think we all are sort of recovering from something, and it doesn't hurt when we learn from the experiences and the expertise of people that are, have made it their life's mission to help other people. Right. And so, I have, the distinct pleasure of talking to someone like that. Right. So Sathiya Sam, I'm really, excited to talk to you and learn about all the different things that you do, how you got into this. But you basically, I know we were like, what's your job title in the beginning? Because you kind of do a lot of things that we can't just put a label on, but you're a business owner. But you're also doing a lot of coaching for people, right?
Yes. Yeah. So,
Okay.
I founded a company called Deep Clean Coaching. We've been helping men quit a very specific type of addiction called pornography
Mm-hmm.
addiction for the last 7 years. And so, yeah, I've dedicated my life to helping as many men as possible, specifically quit a really debilitating and often misunderstood addiction. So that's what I do in a bit of a nutshell. I'm an author, I'm an international speaker. There's all those sub-labels, but at
Of
the
course.
crux of it, I'm just trying to help more guys make their lives better so they can make the world a better place.
I can always tell the speakers when we have interviews, especially on video, because like your video feed is so clean, and like your background is set up, and you have the Shure mics, like, oh, this guy knows what he's doing. Great.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, for
Yeah, it's a big
sure.
part of what we do.
That's incredible. Okay, so you said part of it is the misunderstood parts of what is pornography addiction, and so I guess that'd be a good place for us to start. Is like, first of all, what is it? How do we identify it?
Yeah, most people hear addiction and they think of exactly what you mentioned. They think of alcohol and drugs. Rightfully so. Those are two of probably the best studied and researched addictions. Those are both in a category of substance addictions, and
Hmm.
so that's where your body develops a chemical dependency on, the alcohol or whatever the drug might be. There's a second category of addiction called process addiction. It's much broader. And if you really think of it, we're all addicted to a process of some kind. Most of us probably wake up in the morning, we check our phone first thing, we
Right.
check notifications. That would be an example. Now, that's not going to destroy your life necessarily, but pornography would be in this category. And it certainly is a lot more destructive. The reason it's not as well understood is because it's not as well researched, but it's
Hmm.
also heavily debated because there is research that would suggest you could watch pornography with no harmful effects. Some studies would even show with positive effects. And so I think that's where people get very confused as how could this be an addiction? And how do you know if you're addicted? Those lines are still being drawn, and we could get into all of that. But I think at the crux of it, to answer your question a bit more directly,
Sure.
the greatest indicators that somebody has an addiction to something like pornography is usually they had early exposure. Secondly, is that they've tried to quit several different ways and they haven't been able to. And third is that it's beginning to impact their quality of life. So they're not upholding social commitments or professional commitments. They're not able to show up the same way in a marriage or with their kids. Some aspect of their quality of life is being affected specifically because of the porn consumption.
Incredible. And you primarily work with men, is that correct?
Mhm. Yeah,
Right.
that's where I mean, not to say that women don't need help in this area as well, because they do. And there's lots of stigma associated with addiction in general, definitely sexual addiction, and even more specifically pornography addiction. Women deal with another layer of addiction because everybody thinks this should be a man's issue and not a woman's issue. But I just don't have the expertise there. I lend it more to men. That's where I'm the most effective.
Great. Yeah, absolutely. It's good to know where like your powers lie.
Yeah, exactly. You gotta
Yeah,
stay in
yeah.
your lane, right?
Right, for sure. So
Yeah.
how did you get into this? What is your story that you were like, you know what, this is something I'm going to pursue. I'm going to help these men overcome their pornography addictions.
Yeah, so I mean, I was born in 1990. I kind of grew up in the transition to the tech data-driven world that we live in now. And so for me, what that basically means is I got exposed to pornography not through a magazine, not even a VHS or a DVD, but on the internet, online, 2001.
Sure.
I was 11 years old. It happened in the computer lab of my Christian school, and I was a pastor's kid. So I grew up with all the right sheltering in the world to prevent this kind of stuff from happening. And it's not like I was exposed and then I was addicted overnight. That's almost never the story.
Hmm.
It just planted a little seed, and then when I got a little bit older in high school, I started to frequently watch a bit more. By the time I was college age and in my 20s, it was just a regular part of my life. I was very high achieving academically, and so I had five figures in research grants as an undergrad. So I'm doing research, I'm completing my undergrad, I was working, I was volunteering, I was hoping to go to med school, and so the only way I knew, Ty, to cope with all the pressure in my life was pornography. It was literally the only outlet I had. It was very
Wow.
rewarding, took the edge off, and kind of just gave me a sense of like, hey, all is well in the world, even though my world is chaotic and there's a lot of expectation on my back. Um, like any good addict, I told myself I could quit whenever I want. It's not that big of a deal. The term porn addiction didn't even exist back then, to be honest. Um, and that time came. I was starting to take my professional life more seriously. My spiritual life had started to develop quite a bit more, and I was really feeling a conviction. Like, I don't think this is right. I don't think it's good for me. I'm ready to stop. And so I drew that line in the sand. I said, today's the day I quit, and I went 3 days. I went three
Yeah.
days and I was like, whoa, what's that about?
Yeah.
So I thought, well, okay, I just should have prepared a bit more. So I mustered up a little bit more willpower and really just, made a bit more of an effort to kind of get this thing under wraps. And honestly, I just kind of spun my tires. And that's when I realized, wow, this thing had deeper roots in my life than I realized. And that began a 5-year recovery journey. The first 3 years, I did a lot of logical, mainstream solutions that weren't actually very effective, like internet
Hmm.
filters and accountability partners and street counting and, the more spiritual side of it, like praying more and all that kind of stuff. And I purposed in my heart. I was so frustrated because it wasn't a lack of effort. It was a lack of effective solutions. And I just purposed in my heart that if I could ever figure out how to actually break free, I would do everything in my power to help as many other people do the exact same thing. And so I did eventually figure out what moves the needle. I had my last relapse February 2016. So I'm coming up on 10 years here in just a few months. And
Wow.
I waited a couple years before I started deep clean. I wanted to really make sure I was actually in a good place and that I felt like I had enough freedom, enough authority to be able to, lend myself to other people. But we launched in December 2018, and we've helped thousands of guys quit pornography themselves since. And yeah, we're not stopping anytime soon.
Wow, that's incredible. That's a lot of people. And you said you were on a mission to help 100 million men.
That's the number we have.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe I won't get to help all of those people directly, but
Right.
the stats are pretty clear. A lot of people are struggling with this in silence, and so yeah, we're aiming to grow our audiences, grow our reach,
Mm.
and definitely we don't see any reason why we couldn't be hitting those kinds of numbers helping people.
You mentioned earlier that you grew up in, when you were even before you were 11 years old, you were growing up around, people of faith, right? And so
Yep.
it's still important to you
Yeah.
now, obviously on your website, right? So that's part of your process in deep cleaning. You're helping people come back and sort of realign themselves with the people that they're supposed to be and to play the roles that they need to in their families, but also an alignment and relationship with God, right?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I believe that everybody has purpose in life. We're all here for a reason. And that reason's always bigger than our own life, and so if nothing else, it's for family. I think it's one of the best things you can do is to be married and to raise a family. For my life's a good example of this. I quit pornography as I was single, and very shortly after found the love of my life, Shaloma, and we got married. We have two little boys, and we hope to have a couple more kiddos. But then for me being able to start deep clean and make a difference in the world, and I really feel like there might be other topics that I focus on one day, Ty, but the things I'm doing, like the podcasting and the teaching and developing curriculum and coaching, these are the things that I feel like God made me to do. And so quitting pornography and getting that addiction out of my life has enabled me to do this to the fullness of my capabilities. And that's the most exciting part about the work we do. I'm not
Yeah.
I hate what addiction does to people more than I hate the addiction itself. And so that's the really rewarding part, is you watch these guys eliminate pornography from their life, and then they go and they start that business they always wanted to start. That guy, he goes and finally asks out that girl he's had a crush on for 2 years. It's just guys start to take risks, and they start to step more into what God's designed them for. And to me, that's kind of what makes the whole process worth it.
Yeah, leading this back to other types of addictions, we talk on the show a lot about, substance addictions and that type of thing. But one of the most effective ways that we've talked to with people with lived experience that helps them come out of it was peer support, right? And so it's
Hmm.
somebody that's already been in those shoes, they've already lived there, they pulled themselves up, and now they've dedicated themselves and using their own experience, of, hey, I've been there, I can help you out. And that's exactly what you're doing with these guys. You've been there,
Yeah.
you've experienced it. And so I'm sure there's a spectrum of varying degrees of like what pornography addiction can be,
Yeah.
but you're coming in it with your own experience and knowing that there's a common ground that you can sort of meet on.
Yeah, there's a famous rat experiment. I forget how long ago this was done, but they put a rat in a bucket of water that it couldn't get out of, and they would test, basically. It's a little bit cruel, but they would kind of test to see how long the rat would swim
Hmm.
before it would drown. And they found that the typical rat, it all averaged out to about a couple hours. So they did a second version of the experiment. Have you heard of this before, Ty? Have you heard of this?
Not
Oh,
this
okay.
one. Yeah.
Okay, so the second version of the experiment, they do the same thing. They put the rat in the bucket, but they started to identify kind of right before the rat would give up and would succumb to the water. And so right as they identified, okay, it's starting to give up, they would pull it out of the water, they would dry it off, they would kind of settle it down, and then they put it back in the water again. And they would time to see how much longer the rat would swim, if any, based on its experience of kind of being saved once. And what they found is that it didn't just swim a little bit longer. It actually, instead of swimming for a couple hours, the rats on average the second round would swim around 55 to 60 hours before they would
Wow.
give up. And it's a bit of a weird experiment, but it demonstrates the power of hope. When you have that experience of, I've tasted of being rescued, the possibility of being rescued again was enough to keep the rat going for exponentially longer periods of time. And so when you are in recovery and you have somebody like a peer support, somebody who's been there before, they're the person just reminding you, hey, you can be rescued from this, you can be free. It happened in my life and it can happen in yours. And so when I started Deep Clean, I was that person, and I really leveraged my story as much as possible to inspire the people I was working with. But what's been really cool about just being in this long enough and building up a community is now we have hundreds, thousands of guys who have been through our program, who can do the same thing, who can say, hey, to those of you guys that are starting out, we've been here before. Here's my story. We call these guys spotters. And so kind of like, if anybody's worked out before, a spotter is somebody who just
Hmm.
watches you during the lift. They might touch the bar a little bit, but they're not really doing the lifting. You're still doing the lifting. They're just there to remind you, hey, you got this, you can do this, and I'm going to catch you if you fall. And so we have a whole community of spotters who are literally just there designed to help guys that are early on in the journey. And it's that famous TED talk, like the opposite of addiction is not sobriety, it's connection. We are big believers of that, and it really drives a lot of the solutions we provide to our clients.
Incredible. Yeah. Go back to the faith part, how that's such a huge role in what you're doing. So just so clearly defining and putting what is pornography addiction and the things that we've talked about.
Yeah.
Also, I think it's important to cover whenever you're talking about any kind of, faith that's involved, that there is such a thing as a healthy sexuality, right?
Hmm.
And that is a big distinction from pornography addiction.
Yeah.
How do you define what that is?
Wow, that's a really loaded question. I mean, I think I think healthy, like, again, coming from a faith-based perspective, like my personal conviction is that like a healthy sexual relationship would be between a consenting husband and wife. Um that's sort of the criteria. So we look for consent, and then we look for a covenant. The reason the covenant part is so important on a kind of a sexual level is because a sexual experience, everybody knows this, a sexual experience is deeply personal, it's deeply intimate. It doesn't matter how tuned out and how numbed out you might be. There's something incredibly personal about it. And my conviction is that a long-term commitment is what's required to be able to manage a sexual experience like that, especially long-term. So the faith element of pornography addiction, because there's a side of it that you could almost leave the faith out. There's enough neuroscience, there's enough research now that just shows, look, when you watch pornography, it really doesn't do very good things to your brain. There's a lot of damage there. I think the deeper layer of the faith element is I long for everybody to have healthy, lasting sexual experiences. And so when we talk about guys quitting pornography addiction, it's not just about ditching the thing that's bad, but it's one thing we hear very, very commonly is that guys will quit pornography and then they start to have better sexual experiences
Mm,
in their relationships. And to me, that just makes sense because as digital as pornography is, that's sort of the illusion is it's just digital. It's not the same as hooking up with other
yeah.
people, but it's incredibly sexual as well. And so when you're devoting all of your, your sexuality and your sexual energy back into a committed relationship, to me, that's the best expression. It's the best experience you can have of sexuality. And I think that's why quitting pornography is so powerful.
Absolutely, and like I said, it does so much damage to your brain, and there's a lot of science that's gone into that, a lot of studies that have reached into that. Okay, so deep clean, how does it start? When if somebody comes to you and they say, "Hey, I think I need help," where do you even start with someone?
So all of the data suggests that the greatest indicator of whether or not somebody really gets help when they reach out for it on this is in the mental health spectrum, not just addiction specifically, is what they call therapeutic alliance. So it's what's the bond or how much do you trust the person or the practitioner that is leading you through this journey? So when somebody comes to me, I as much as possible, like it's always easy to be like, yeah, like you should do this program or you could do this course or like let's get you into something. But my biggest thing is I'd actually rather people listen to my podcast. It's got over 1,000 episodes, tons of content.
Hmm.
Follow me on Instagram, check out my YouTube channel. Just follow our stuff for a little bit and see if you actually agree with what we're talking about. Because if you don't agree or you kind of feel like I'm not sure if I trust this Sathiya guy, look, you could go to my top premier coaching package and it would just be a waste of my time and it'd be a waste of that person's money because without the trust there, I'm only going to be able to lead them so far. So I would much rather that they take their time getting to know us. And then if after that they feel like, okay, I like this guy, I like the message, I feel like he can help me. Um, beyond, we do have a book, we give away the book for free as well. So that's another way for people to get a taste of us. But we really just have two different ways that people plug in. One is a community-based model. For less than $2 a day, you can get our system, you get coaching from me, and most importantly, you get a community of men from around the world pursuing freedom. And then we have a higher level coaching package for people that, really want this one and done.
Yeah.
They want more of an intensive experience, and they have the financial means to do it.
No, that makes sense. And having so many different avenues where people can sort of, like you said, listen to your content, read, and figure out, oh, is this going to be for me or not? Is this the right fit? Yeah, it's really incredible because you have quite a few different things going on. You've got your podcast, you've got books out, you've got your newsletter, and yeah, and then of course, your website has links to all of those. And so it's incredible, robust sort of media system you've created around this one subject.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, look, when you struggle with this kind of stuff, generally the struggle is daily. And so for us, the reason we have over 1,000 episodes in, just over 4 years is because we put out a lot of content every day on our podcast. Because I'm trying to be the voice in people's ears every day, just reminding you, hey, you can do this, it's possible, and here's a little bit of value. Hopefully that'll get you through today. And so, yeah, so lots of media sources for that reason. We're trying to be as helpful and as valuable as possible.
Incredible. Well, it's good to know that that's a resource that's available to people. Because, like I said, people that are in any kind of addiction, it's really hard to identify where those resources are for them, like what's available. You're just walking down the street, you might like you're leaving it to chance if you'll ever run into anything in person. And for you, you're located in Canada, but you've got a service that could reach anybody on the internet. So there are definitely ways that they can still get help no matter where they are, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that was a huge reason for going more the virtual route. Now, granted, we do highly value in-person experiences, so we do retreats and those sort of things where people can build that brotherhood in person. But yeah, we just know it's a global issue, and we want it to be able to reach as many people as possible. So yeah, so it's a huge advantage we have.
That's incredible. All right. Well, Sathiya, I'm gonna ask you a question I always ask everybody at the end of the show. So, given with your experience, both personal and now that you've made a career out of this, and I'm sure you've talked to so many different men, and you're going after that 100 million mark, right?
Mhm.
Um, so let's say that somebody thinks, you know what, I know that I've had a problem. I've had it for a while, but I have done nothing about it. I've tried quitting on my own a few times, but I don't know what to do. What do you think is a long-term solution for that guy?
I mean, I think the long-term solution is ultimately, and this is kind of the core deep clean message, is you have to get to the roots of what's going on. If you can run over a weed with a lawnmower and everything will look pretty clean for a little while, but as long as the root system is there, it's going to grow back. And so if you've tried it on your own or you've tried, willpower, you've maybe tried some internet filters, some things that kind of make sense, but they're not really getting you the results you want, it's probably because you're running over that weed with a lawnmower, and it might just take a little bit more effort to get to the real roots of the issue. And what I would say to that person is it's not as bad as it sounds. In fact, if you have somebody who knows what they're doing and can guide you through it, if you have a system, a process, and the right community behind you, then actually it's not just that it's possible, it's probable. You can really stack the odds in your favor. It's just a matter of finding the right place to do it.
Absolutely. Great advice. Awesome. Incredible. So, Sathiya, if people want to find out about Deep Clean or about you, where would they go for that?
Deepcleancoaching.com. That's going to have all the information about our programs, our offerings. We highly recommend people start with our community-based membership if that's where people want to get started. And if you just want to take a look at our resources and that sort of thing, sathiyasam.com has my podcast, my book, which you can get for free, and all the other resources if you want to kind of just get to know us more.
Incredible. Yeah, we'll definitely put links into the description and the show notes of this episode. So if you're looking for those, they'll be right down there. So click it and connect with Sathiya. Yeah, and learn more about this. It's great. Yeah. Your podcast, by the way, I was looking at that. You've got quite a few episodes that are out and covering a wide range of subjects. And
Yeah.
so it's not just one thing. Like I know we're giving an overview of like a summarized version right now, but there is so much deeper that you can go with this.
Yeah, I mean, we really believe like what we're doing makes men better.
Hmm.
And so it goes well beyond their sexual lives. We talk about relationships and careers and productivity and anything that's going to help them better their lives and better the world.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Sathiya, thank you so much for being on here and sharing your expertise and for, I mean, literally just doing what you're doing as a career, which is helping other people. And that affects other, families and their lives and everybody that they're connected to. And like you said, it's just sort of, it's the ripple effect, right? Once you
Yes.
help that one man.
Yeah, yeah. We
Yeah.
believe if you change the man, you change the world, right? It only takes one
Yeah. There it
person.
is.
Yeah.
That's the quote. And thank you for watching this. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can also find us as an audio podcast on the podcast platforms from Spotify to Amazon Music to iHeart and vice versa. If you're listening to this as an audio podcast, you can find us on YouTube. Search for Long Term, a podcast in recovery. And the important thing that we always ask is not just, subscribe, of course. We like the comments, we like the likes, but the most important thing that you can do today is to share this episode with somebody that you think would benefit from hearing the message that Sathiya has brought here today, right? So he's talked about quite a few things, and we know that there are a lot of people, a lot of men right now that are struggling in a lot of different areas, and pornography addiction is a pretty common thing to get sucked into, right? If you could think of someone, even if you don't know if they are, just share this episode with a guy in your life. How about that? And that message will hopefully reach the people that need to hear it. Maybe they'll get in contact with Sathiya and be able to go in his program. And like, you never know what's going to happen. I mean, the worst thing that can happen is they won't listen to it. The best thing that can happen is that it saves a life and everyone they're connected to. So I appreciate you being here for each one of these episodes and learning with me. And we will see you in the next episode.